Welcome back to Sip and Talk. We are here again, ready to talk about the big stuff, the kind of hidden stuff, and the things that just make you go, huh.
Absolutely. And I've got to say, I feel like we've been gearing up for episode 500 forever. I mean, I practically had the party poppers ready to go.
I know, me too. I even had Ethan, run the actual numbers because it felt like we had to be close. And, it turns out we kind of shot past 500 quite a while ago, actually.
Wait, how far past? I had, a whole celebratory monologue worked out.
Yeah, we're looking at somewhere around 610 episodes, give or take.
Okay.
So missed it by over 100.
610. Wow. Okay, so that's like planning this amazing surprise birthday party, right? And then you realize the birthday was last month, and maybe they didn't even invite you because they just figured you knew. That's awkward.
Super awkward. So hey, listen up, you out there listening. What should we do? How do we celebrate this massively delayed anniversary? Seriously, send us your ideas. Maybe a really long, probably slightly embarrassing look back. We're open.
Okay, well, speaking of awkward timing, or maybe a government trying way too hard to control timing and, the story. Today's discussion is kind of the opposite of missing the moment. It's about people acting, maybe, too much or too early, or just plain dangerously and landing in serious trouble, or, the flip side, a government acting way too much leading to just absurdity.
That's actually a perfect way to frame this Sip and Talk, because the big headline we're starting with, it's one of the most serious, real-world spy cases Taiwan's dealt with lately. We're talking about Haiyan Kuo. He's the highest-ranking retired general over there, ever caught up in a communist espionage thing. Just got sentenced 7 years, 6 months.
Yeah, and this case really shines a light on the intense strategic focus the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, puts on trying to get inside Taiwan's defenses, politically, militarily, you name it.
Right. But our mission today is to use this really serious, really physical threat, because this sets the bar for what actual subversion looks like. Use that as a contrast. We're going to look at the, frankly, absurd realities inside CCP-controlled China, especially how incredibly low they set the bar for calling their own citizens subversives. It's going to be a look at, double standards, serious thought control, and what we're kind of calling ideological colonialism.
And we'll definitely hit on some of the truly awkward, sometimes spectacular ways things blow up when a state tries to micromanage every single thought, every fashion trend, every comment someone makes online.
Okay, so let's unpack this Haiyan Kuo case first, because this really establishes the baseline, what actual physical foreign-funded subversion looks like. This isn't just some guy, venting on Twitter.
Exactly. So the ruling just came down October 22nd, 2025 from the Taiwan High Court. Haiyan Kuo, retired Army Lieutenant General, is 81 years old, got 7 years and 6 months. And the charge, developing an organization, attempt to subvert the state. That's under Taiwan's national security law.
And his background, wow, you can't really overstate how big a deal this is. He is absolutely the highest ranking military guy in Taiwan's whole history to get convicted for spying for the mainland. This isn't some low-level grunt. He held really senior, really sensitive posts, deputy commander of the Army 6th Corps, commander of the Huadong Defense Command. This guy knew stuff. Strategic deployments, capabilities, the works.
And the background matters too, right? Haiyan Kuo wasn't exactly hiding his views. I mean, going back to 2014, he was openly leading groups of retired generals over the mainland for forums. He even publicly told the Taiwanese military not to fight back the PLA attack. So yeah, he was saying pro-unification stuff publicly,
right.
But the court basically found his actions went way beyond just talking politics. It crossed into active treason.
That's the key difference, isn't it? Giving controversial speeches, okay, that's one thing. But actively setting up a military network to portray your own country, that's a whole other level. So what did the investigation actually find? The timeline, the scope of what he was doing?
Right, so it seems like it kicked off around 2018. Haiyan Kuo apparently got introduced to CCP intelligence people. Reports say the head of a pro-unification party in Taiwan helped make the connection. And look, this wasn't just a friendly chat. This was a funded operation.
Okay, funded. How much are we talking? Because, people don't usually risk spending the rest of their lives in jail for peanuts.
Exactly. The court found he got quite a bit of money, estimated around NTD $9.62 million. That's roughly 300,000 US dollars, paid out in different currencies, RMB, US dollars, NTD. And this cash wasn't for travel expenses. It was specifically to build and run a spy network. The goal was to undermine Taiwan's defense from the inside.
300 grand to buy loyalty, buy secrets. So what did he actually manage to do with that network?
Well, his main job was recruiting, both active military guys and retired ones. The evidence specifically mentioned him recruiting his own godson, Ho Shoukong, and a retired major, Chang Shenghao. And these weren't just names on a list. Their job was super specific. Get sensitive military data. We're talking about details on strategic deployments, locations of military strongholds across Taiwan, maps, troop movements, where the critical stuff is.
Okay, and this is where it shifts from just gathering intel to, actively planning for an invasion, right? The whole armed inside help plot. This part sounds seriously scary.
Yeah, this plot is basically the smoking gun. This is what really nailed the subversion charge. Because in September 2024, they went beyond just talking. They were out there physically scouting locations along Taiwan's northern coast, which is, a likely spot for a PLA landing. They were using drones, practicing how to track military radar vehicles, essentially figuring out how to blind Taiwan's early warning systems. They were looking for terrain that would make an invasion easier.
So not just stealing documents, they were basically running practice drills for the enemy.
Exactly. And the absolute most damning part, their pledge. They apparently committed on record to acting as armed inside help if or when the PLA attacked. That commitment, that shifts it from spying to direct operational support for an invading army.
Wow. Okay, if you're gathering real military secrets, doing reconnaissance for an invasion, and promising to fight with an invading force, yeah, that is the literal textbook definition of subversion, actual subversion. Puts the whole country at risk.
And that's the standard we need to remember. The court saw how serious this coordinated infiltration was. It also points to a bigger trend, unfortunately. The number of these kinds of spy cases being indicted in Taiwan has jumped way up since 2022. And this case really underscores why Taiwan now has to watch its own retired senior officers so closely. Apparently, 2/3 of the recent spy indictments involve current or former military folks. The CCP is clearly going after that deep institutional knowledge held by Taiwan's ex-commanders.
Okay, so we've got the Taiwan standard. Military treason, foreign funding, planning armed backup for an invasion. Extremely high bar, right? Now, let's pivot. Let's look across the strait. Because when you look at mainland China, the bar for subversion is, well, it's practically non-existent. It's buried underground.
It's such a stark contrast. We have to compare that physical military threat with the, let's call it the ideological threat that the CCP labels as subversion. We're talking about China's Article 105 of their criminal law. The crime of subversion of state power.
Okay, Article 105, break that down for us. What does the law actually say is the crime?
So the law itself talks about organizing, plotting, or carrying out acts to subvert state power or overthrow the socialist system. Now, this crime has a history. It sort of replaced the old anti-revolution crimes from the Mao era, which were terrifying in their own right. But the crucial bit, the thing that makes it so scary today is this. Unlike the Taiwan case where they proved physical actions in mainland China, intent can be enough. You don't actually have to succeed or even really do much. Just intending to is often sufficient for a conviction.
Intent is enough? Wait, so if I write in my private diary that I don't like the government, a prosecutor could argue my intent was subversive, even if nobody ever saw that diary.
Theoretically, yes. That's exactly the danger. This is the core of what experts call preventive repression. The CCP uses this law not really to punish actual threats, but to crush the potential for any organized disagreement before it even starts. It's like a legal tool to stop the butterfly effect, If you just intended to maybe start a group to talk about democracy, even if you never held a meeting, that intent itself can be framed as a threat to the whole socialist system.
And the real-world cases just show how ridiculously broad they make this. Take the case of Li Mingxie, the Taiwanese NGO worker, back in 2017.
Oh, yeah, Li Mingxie. Yeah. His story is just a perfect example of this kind of thought policing. He got 5 years in prison. And what did he do? He discussed democracy, human rights, criticized the CCP a bit on WeChat. With friends and contacts inside China, there was no money involved, no weapons, no calls for violence, just online chat and trying to foster, civil discussion. And they labeled him an active participant in subversion.
5 years for group chats. That sends a seriously chilling message, right? Yeah. Especially to anyone thinking about cross-strait dialogue or civil society work.
Oh, absolutely. It was a classic kill the chicken to scare the monkey situation. And then you've got more recent cases which were also deeply worrying. Like in 2024, Huang Shuiken, #MeToo activist, and Wang Jianbing, a labor rights advocate, they got hit with serious sentences, 5 years for her, 3.5 for him.
Okay, and what was their big crime? Planning a coup. Smuggling weapons.
Their crime. Organizing small private discussion groups, like literally just getting together with people to talk about feminist issues or workers' rights. Supporters stressed this was purely civil conversation, often behind closed doors, absolutely no political subversive goal. But the state saw the mere act of people organizing themselves outside of official party control as a direct threat.
It really seems like any kind of independent organization, no matter how small or non-political, is seen as the enemy.
Precisely. And that goes for politics, too, especially in Hong Kong. Think about the Hong Kong 47 case, also in 2024. You had Democratic figures facing years in prison under the national security law, just for discussing election strategy. They held unofficial primary elections to coordinate candidates. And the government's argument was basically that planning to win too many seats was a plot to paralyze the government, therefore subversion.
So wait. Discussing how to actually use the democratic process, the one the state supposedly allowed, that became a crime. That doesn't even make sense.
It's a total contradiction. And look at the massive crackdown on human rights lawyers, the 709 crackdown from 2015 to 2017. Lawyers like Zhu Shifeng, he got 7 years, and Li Heping, scores of them arrested just for doing their jobs, defending human rights cases, representing ordinary people with grievances, criticizing unfair court decisions. The state labeled them a subversive organization just for coordinating legal defense strategies.
So let's pull this together. In Taiwan, subversion means proven treason, physical acts, military betrayal. In mainland China, subversion is this incredibly vague, catch-all legal weapon used to equate peaceful organizing, free expression, even just doing your job as a lawyer, with trying to overthrow the entire state.
It completely twists the whole idea of law. It just confirms that the legal system there is mainly a tool to keep the regime stable. They just keep stretching that definition of subversion to cover anything that makes them feel insecure, no matter how peaceful or minor it actually is.
Okay, so if the legal definition of subversion is already ridiculously broad, the CCP has this other tool. It's even scarier, maybe, because it's sort of outside the legal system altogether, using mental health diagnoses for political control.
Yeah, this is probably one of the most chilling things in modern authoritarian states. It's known internationally as political psychiatry. And it's not new. They basically borrowed the playbook directly from the Soviet Union, especially during the Brezhnev era.
Can you remind us the Soviet connection? What did they do?
Well, the Soviets famously came up with diagnoses like sluggish schizophrenia. Basically, if you disagreed with the Communist Party, you weren't seen as a political opponent with valid criticisms. No, you were just mentally ill. And this gave them the perfect excuse to lock up writers, activists, anyone who spoke out without needing a messy political trial. They'd isolate them, drug them, and completely destroy their public credibility. The CCP saw how effective that was and basically adopted and systematized it.
And since the 80s, it's China's public security, essentially, the police who run these special hospitals. They're called the Onkang system. And what makes them so terrifying is the total lack of real medical independence, right?
Exactly. These aren't your typical psychiatric facilities. They specifically target people the party sees as politically risky. Petitioners who complain too much, rights defenders, Falun Gong practitioners. And here's the key. The diagnosis, like needs treatment, often isn't made by an independent doctor. It's made by local party officials who just want that person silenced. There's no real due process. The political decision comes first, then the medical label gets slapped on.
And the treatment itself, it's designed to break people, isn't it? And make sure no one listens to them again.
It's basically systemic abuse, sometimes torture. People are locked away for ages, forcibly given powerful psychiatric drugs, subjected to electroshock therapy, sometimes for years. The goal is twofold. Shut the person up physically, obviously, but also, crucially, destroy their reputation, their voice. I mean, how seriously is society going to take someone the state has officially labeled as mentally unstable?
It's an attack on their credibility just as much as their freedom. And we have a couple of really disturbing, high-profile examples of this recently. First, Dong Yakwang, the woman they called the Ink Girl.
Right, Dong Yakwang. Back in 2018, she protested the whole personality cult around Xi Jinping by splashing ink on this huge portrait of him. What happened next? She was immediately taken away and forced into a mental hospital in Hunan. Reports later confirmed she was subjected to electroshock and heavy medication. When she eventually got out, her family said she was just different, mentally impaired, withdrawn. It's a horrifying example of the state literally trying to create mental illness to deal with someone who spoke out.
And then there was Li Tiantian, the teacher in Hunan, around 2020.
Yeah, Li Tiantian's crime was criticizing online how the government handled the very beginning of the pandemic. The confusion and lack of transparency. What happened? She was quickly diagnosed with bipolar disorder, forcibly detained, and treated for months. Using the on-kang system like this just shows that any questioning of the official story, whether it's politics or even public health, can risk you being labeled mentally ill by the state.
It's control of your body, control of your mind. But what's truly mind-boggling is how far this control fetish goes. It goes past political speech, past physical freedom, right into what you like, culturally, how you look. This is where we get into that ideological colonialism idea.
Yeah, the state is literally trying to invade and control the inner lives and culture of its citizens. The most maybe famous recent example is the whole aesthetic police thing, starting around 2021, really ramping up again in 2025. This official push to resolutely put an end to abnormal aesthetics like sissy men. That's the term they use, yangpa.
The war on effeminate guys.
Well, it's framed as much more serious than just fashion policing. They're actively pushing for masculinity, yanggangzi ki, and they explicitly link it to national security. The official line is that these effeminate styles are a sign of Western cultural erosion, making the nation spiritually soft, unable to fight back against foreigners. The CCP is basically terrified of perceived weakness. So it's mandating strength, even if it's just like how guys look.
So it's not just, we don't like those clothes. It's, you need to look like you're ready for war.
Pretty much. And this led to that absolutely bizarre Yi Yanguangxi collapse incident in 2025. He's this huge pop idol, right? And he got publicly attacked by state media just for wearing earrings and having dyed hair during a live stream. They accused him of violating masculine aesthetics.
And this is where the absurdity just peaks, right? Because the public reaction wasn't what the government wanted at all.
Oh, it backfired spectacularly. Hundreds of thousands of his fans mobilized online. But they weren't defending his masculinity. They were demanding aesthetic freedom. It basically showed that, yeah, the state can issue orders, but it can't actually force people's taste. And trying just made the government look totally ridiculous and out of touch.
And this fear of organized groups, it goes beyond how people look, right? It hits the fan circles, the fan quan.
This is so key. All those crackdowns on idol competition shows, on fans raising money for their stars, on online voting, it wasn't really about cleaning up bad morals. It was about power. The government is genuinely scared of how effectively these fan groups can organize and mobilize people totally outside of party control. They see fans raising millions for an idol's birthday project overnight or coordinating huge online campaigns, and they think, what if they use that power for politics? A fan club celebrating a pop star today could be an anti-government protest tomorrow, in their eyes.
So any group that can organize itself, even for something totally trivial, is seen as a potential threat to a regime that wants total control.
And this ideological grip tightens even on what people watch, what history they're allowed to engage with, the history and cultural limitations, the Shan Oling.
Right, they put restrictions on historical dramas, especially palace intrigue shows, even time travel stories. Yeah. Why? What's the problem there?
Well, the official line is that these shows promote, like historical nihilism, focus too much on imperial backstabbing, or promote decadent lifestyles, and that distracts people from socialist core values. The CCP wants history to serve a purpose, a patriotic purpose, not just be entertainment. So they started mandating that these shows have to include red elements, hongzhe yuanzu. Basically, they need a revolutionary or patriotic educational message shoehorned in.
And the perfect example of this just completely failing a forced ideology bombing with the audience was that palace drama adaptation.
Oh, it's both hilarious and kind of sad. They took this massively popular period drama, really successful, and officially forced them to remake parts of it into the Red Story of Yangtze Palace in 2025. They crammed in these totally out-of-place characters who were supposed to be revolutionary martyrs and threw in awkward references to the Korean War, the anti-American aid Korea War.
Yeah.
It was just pure propaganda overload.
And the audience reaction.
Complete disaster. It got a terrible score, like 2.3 out of 10 on Duban, which is one of the lowest ratings ever for a big show. It just proves you can't force people to like propaganda no matter how hard you try to disguise it with stuff they previously enjoyed. Mandating taste just doesn't work.
Okay, so we've got the serious external threat with high on Kuo, the absurd internal repression with Article 105 and political psychiatry, and this futile attempt at cultural policing. Now, let's talk about the massive, often embarrassing ways the CCP's control keeps failing, constantly undermining that image of perfect unified power they try so hard to project.
And maybe the biggest ongoing fail is the sheer hypocrisy at the heart of the Great Firewall. It really highlights what you could call the information dictatorship.
The irony is just staggering. The CCP goes to enormous length to ban platforms like Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram for its own billion-plus citizens. They cite national security, Western spiritual pollution, all that. And people inside China caught using a VPN to get around the wall. They risk serious trouble.
And yet, official government bodies, the foreign ministry, the propaganda departments, and in this case we'll talk about the Taiwan Affairs Office, they're constantly using these exact same forbidden platforms for their external propaganda pushes, the Daohuaxuan. They're literally climbing over the wall every single day, locking their own people up for even peeking over it.
And this blatant double standard led to just a spectacular real-time public faceplant in late 2025, the Taiwan Affairs Office Facebook fiasco.
Right, so October 21st, 2025, the Taiwan Affairs Office, or Youytube, launches this brand new official Facebook page at Taiwan Affairs. They were trying to do this whole soft power, charm offensive thing towards Taiwan, posting slogans in traditional Chinese characters, stuff like, "The two sides of the strait are one family, let's join hands for the Chinese dream." You know, warm and fuzzy.
Trying to be persuasive, build bridges online. How did the global internet community respond to this outreach?
Oh, it went sideways almost immediately. Within 24 hours, the comment section was completely overwhelmed. And not mostly by, like, Taiwanese independence folks arguing back. It was hijacked primarily by mainland Chinese netizens, people who often can't safely raise sensitive issues inside the Great Firewall. They totally ignored the one family slogans.
So what did they talk about instead? What derailed the official propaganda message?
They zeroed in on this really sensitive domestic issue, the case of a popular mainland actor named Yu Menglong. His high-profile disappearance and the swirling rumors about his death had been heavily censored inside China. So the comment section under the Taiwan Affairs Office's unification post just got flooded. Thousands and thousands of comments, mostly identical, asking, "Who killed Yu Menglong?" And has the case been filed yet?
Wow. They turned this external propaganda megaphone into a platform to demand answers about a censored domestic scandal, using the very tool the government bans its citizens from using. That's some serious digital jujitsu right there.
According to reports, the poor person managing the Facebook account basically had to give up trying to delete the comments. There were just too many. The whole thing morphed instantly from a soft influence campaign into a public display of the government's domestic censorship failures and its refusal to address public concerns. It just showed how thin that digital wall really is the second they try to engage with the outside world on its terms.
The moment they crack open a window to beam propaganda out, their own citizens rush to use that window to shout questions about internal problems back in. It just exposes how fragile that whole concept of information sovereignty really is.
And this kind of fragility wasn't just an online thing. That whole year, 2025, which some analysts were calling the snake year bad omen, it was just packed with internal chaos and external embarrassments. Stuff that really chipped away at the image of unshakable stability the CCP projects.
Okay, like what? Let's start with the economy. The whole rare earths threat, the King's card, right?
Yeah, China has massive control over the global supply of rare earth minerals, which are vital for, like, everything high-tech. They often hint they'll use this as a weapon and ace up their sleeve against the U.S. or Taiwan. In 2025, they made some particularly strong threats about cutting off supply.
And the predictable but probably costly outcome of trying to strong-arm like that.
Total backfire. Instead of panicking, the U.S. and Australia basically just fast-tracked this huge $2.2 billion rare earth partnership. The explicit goal was to build up alternative supply chains outside of China's control. And what happened? China's rare earth exports actually dropped. Their attempt at economic coercion just accelerated efforts to reduce reliance on them, ultimately weakening their own leverage.
So they played their big card, and it just made the other players team up faster. Okay, what about military embarrassments? You mentioned the South China Sea.
Oh, this one just screams incompetence, frankly. August 11th, 2025. A Chinese Coast Guard ship, number 3104, was aggressively chasing a much smaller Philippine patrol boat, which is already a tense situation, right? And in the process, it collided with one of the PLA Navy's own advanced warships, the guided missile destroyer Gilan.
Wait, their own ships crashed into each other?
Yep. And apparently it was a pretty serious collision, badly damaged the Coast Guard vessel. State media, of course, went totally silent on it. But Chinese social media lit up with rumors of casualties, people posting the 3 candles emoji on Weibo, which often implies deaths. It just made the whole military look incredibly undisciplined, accident-prone, right there on the world stage. Hard to project power when your own ships are playing bumper cars.
And meanwhile, internally, the anti-corruption drive just keeps churning.
Yeah, the purge grinds on, which signals deep, ongoing instability, not strength. The 2025 anti-corruption campaign kept uncovering what officials themselves called worse-than-ever corruption. And critically, it hit the military hard again. 9 PLA generals were publicly purged in 2025 alone. That's not stability. That's continuous high-stakes political infighting that completely undermines any claim of clean, efficient governance.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? The same system that allows the corruption needed to fund something like Hyanko's spy ring is also creating the internal chaos that destabilizes the regime.
And you can't ignore the basic, everyday social instability that just flies in the face of the harmonious society narrative. Things like major public health scares. Remember the September 2025 college black water poisoning? Almost 2,100 students across multiple campuses got sick from contaminated water. That points to systemic failures. Add that to the disturbingly high rate of, random public attacks, cars ramming into crowds. It really challenges the state's core promise of providing basic safety.
Okay, and one last one for this section. The ultimate proof that even total surveillance isn't total control. The Chongqing Hidden Projection Protest, September 2025.
Ah, yes, this is a great little story of ingenuity against the machine. An activist named Qi Hong managed to use a small portable projector hidden somewhere nearby to beam these huge anti-CCP slogans like "A New China Without the Communist Party" onto the side of a big prominent hotel in downtown Chongqing.
Okay, Chongqing, a city just blanketed with surveillance cameras, facial recognition, everything. How long did it take the authorities to find this little projector?
50 minutes. 50 agonizing minutes for the police to locate and shut down this remote projector while this giant, bright anti-government message was blazing across a building in a super heavily monitored city. It was just this perfect little demonstration that even the most advanced, pervasive surveillance state isn't foolproof. It has blind spots, especially against creative, low-tech, decentralized resistance. So if we put all these pieces together, the very real military subversion in Taiwan compared with the totally different ideologically defined subversion on the mainland, the aesthetic policing, the Onkang system, all these embarrassing fails.
Yeah.
What we're really seeing is this kind of clear mirror image thing going on.
Yeah, the exact same word subversion ends up meaning two radically different things depending on which side of the Taiwan Strait you're on.
Exactly. In Taiwan, it means protecting democracy from a physical external military threat, from actual treason. But in mainland China, subversion becomes this tool to lock up thoughts, to punish people for organizing peaceful discussion groups, for criticizing policy, or even just for protesting, landing them in the mental hospital. It's like a cage built for the mind, enforced through what we called ideological colonialism.
And the fundamental lesson here seems to be about how states try to achieve stability. Is it through genuine consent, or is it through constant coercion? The CCP's whole strategy seems built on desperately trying to maintain information sovereignty, basically. A total monopoly on what people see and hear, while simultaneously trying to force the government's will onto every tiny aspect of personal life, culture, even how you look.
And what really strikes me is how fragile this whole system superiority narrative actually looks up close. It seems built on nonstop, almost frantic control, the total sacrifice of individual freedoms, and this deep-seated insecurity that keeps getting exposed by these kinds of high-profile blunders, whether it's warships colliding or just failing to manage a Facebook page.
No, we really want to emphasize, for you listening, we're just analyzing objective facts here, stuff that's publicly reported. Our goal isn't to take sides, but just to lay out the information and provide some context.
Right, and maybe the biggest takeaway for you personally is just how vital critical thinking is and how much we should value the freedoms we might sometimes overlook. Like, really appreciate the freedom you have right now to think your own thoughts, to criticize your government if you want to wear whatever weird clothes you like, to discuss politics openly without fearing you'll be branded as subversive or, even worse, declared mentally ill by the state.
So here's the final thought we want to leave you with, something to chew on. What happens when a government, in its obsessive, constant effort to control every single word, every version of history, every haircut, actually ends up making itself more fragile, less secure than the very democracies it's trying to undermine?
Yeah, hold on to that one. Keep questioning the stories you're told, and always, always cherish that right to make up your own mind.
Wow, this has been a really fascinating and honestly kind of sobering look into how control works and sometimes how ridiculously it falls apart.
As usual, the reality is often weirder than any fiction, and definitely more embarrassing for the people trying to pull all the strings.
Well, thanks for tuning in again to Sip and Talk. Hey, if you like what we do, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us out.
And hey, also check out our old friend Vicky's YouTube channel, Mickytolife. He's got fun memes, does liquor tastings, and posts his latest travel vlogs from Europe. Always good stuff over there.
Definitely check Mickey out. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.